Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. It is our pleasure to present this info session on the Federal Oral Exam Masterclass. My name is Virginia Valencia, and I have the pleasure of being joined by Athena Matilski.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for spending your Tuesday evening with us.
Also with us is Brad Wilk, the co-owner and manager of Interpretrain.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here.
And without further ado, Athena is going to get us started on some logistics.
All right, logistics it is. So I'm going to cover these pretty quickly and then we'll move on to the fun stuff. First, you'll notice that you're all muted. That is because we are trying to avoid cacophony. So just go ahead and use the chat to communicate. There's a lot of us in here right now, and we want to make sure that not everybody hears all of our dogs barking at the same time. What we're going to cover today is the following. We're going to start with some quick group intros. We'd like the chance to get to know all of you a little bit better. And then we're going to talk about the reason we're all here, which is passing the oral exam, the oral federal exam. Virginia and I are going to share our stories about how we passed. And we're going to talk about how to overcome this challenge and the program that we've put together with the view toward what we wish we had had when we were studying for the federal exam. And then we'll talk about next steps, how you can go about applying to our program, and we'll end with a Q&A. So first, let's get to know each other. We've come up with a few questions that we thought that we could use to just share a little bit about ourselves. First of all, location. I'm in Montreal, Canada. Virginia, where are you?
I'm in Seaside, California.
Where it's a little bit warmer than here, I believe. So what about all of you? Where are you tuning in from? Go ahead and put it in the chat. And Virginia, maybe you want to read out
Seattle,
some of the...
Glendale, California, Morristown, New Jersey, Houston, San Jose, California, Dallas, Michigan, Hawaii, North Carolina. Ooh, it's a fun group. New York, New York. Awesome. Las Vegas.
Cool. All right, awesome. Let's see, what's next? Languages. So, okay, we're all here because we speak English and Spanish. But does anyone have any other languages maybe lurking in the corners? I know I can admit to my French. Spanish and I have a really wonderful relationship. French and I have a bit more of a love-hate one, but I do speak some French. What about all of you? Does anybody have some hidden languages?
I see some Arabic, some French, some Portuguese, some Vietnamese.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh, nice. That's great.
That's awesome. All right, and field of practice. So I'm cross-trained as a medical interpreter, a court interpreter, and I just got my master's in conference interpreting, which is very exciting. Virginia, what about you?
I have practiced in medical, conference, and court.
Awesome. And so we want to hear from all of you. Maybe you have experience in those fields or perhaps immigration or education. Feel free to write it in the chat.
We have a court interpreter and a conference interpreter. Immigration as well. Medical, paralegal, medical, court. Awesome. Respiratory therapist, huh?
Oh, wow.
Conference.
Cool.
That's great.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, what about years of experience? I know it depends on how I count. If you count my college internships, I started in 2007, which is about 13 years. I would say maybe 10 years would be a little bit fairer estimate. What about you, Virginia?
I've been working as an interpreter for 17 years. Time flies when you're having fun.
That's amazing. So what about all of you? 1 year, 2 years, 25?
7, 20, 10, 14, 27. Awesome. 27, 29.
Oh man, this is quite the group.
22. That's great.
All right, and then also birthplace. So we thought this was an interesting question. So I can tell you I was born in Somerset, New Jersey.
I was born in Cali, Colombia.
What about all of you?
Ooh, New York, Miami, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Argentina, La Habana, Brazil, Venezuela. Ooh, we have a few Venezuelans here. Welcome.
Awesome. Welcome to everybody. Was that? Oh, yes, other professions. Okay, so a lot of us come to interpreting from other professions, and Virginia and I are no exception. I know that before I became an interpreter, I, for a very short amount of time, was a social worker, and I've also worked as a teacher and still do. What about you, Virginia?
I have been a theater actor. I have been a psychologist, a teacher, and an interpreter.
Many hats. So what other professions do all of you have up your sleeves?
Let's see, case manager, paralegal, editor, accounting, body worker, engineer, sales, documentary producer, translator, model. Ooh.
This is great.
Cool.
Awesome. All right, and so here's a $1,000,000 question. Have you taken this test before? Don't be shy. I know when we were talking about this earlier, we said what? Most people take it more than once, is that right?
Yes, we have a few yeses, we have a few no's.
Anybody taken
Yes.
it more than once before?
Most of the people who pass this test have taken it repeatedly. So it is just a matter of keeping at it until you get the goal accomplished.
I do want to say to those of you taking it the first time, awesome, welcome to the club. This is going to be a fun journey you're in for. Those of you who have done it before know what you're in for. My favorite story is the year that I took my exam, there was a woman who was taking the exam for the 5th time, and that year she passed it. And that just, I think it shows everything that Virginia and I are here to talk about with you tonight, which is that if you have a goal and you set yourself, the steps out to go there and you don't give up, then you're going to get there. So awesome. Kudos to all of you, whether you're doing this for the first time or the 10th time. I'm really happy to see you all here. All right, so let's jump right in. We're all here with a common goal. We want federal court certification. That's why you're here. That's why you've given up your Tuesday evening. That's why potentially you'll be spending quite a bit of time with us next spring. So you're here to deal with a challenge. And we know that about 4 to 6% of people, 4 to 6% of candidates for the federal exam actually pass it. It's really challenging. But we are here to tell you that you can do it. It's a very difficult goal, but it is not impossible. So the thing is, we know that it can be daunting, and you're probably asking yourself some questions similar to what Virginia and I were asking ourselves when we were taking this exam. Questions like, how do I get started? What am I supposed to study? What's the sequence supposed to be? What are my weak spots? And once I know what my weak spots are, how do I strengthen them? This is a big one too. How do I assess and keep track of my progress? And finally, how do I stay motivated until I accomplish my goal? It's funny because Virginia and I didn't work together back when we were studying for this exam, but we really were, we've compared notes, and we were asking ourselves these same questions. And to a certain extent, we had to reinvent the wheel. And our hope for our program is that you're not going to have to do that, that we can lay it out for you and help you to deal with these things. Our hope is to take the guesswork out of your training and to show you a clear strategy, what it is that you have to do to achieve what you're looking for. We're also both really excited to be presenting a holistic approach to this challenge. Something that addresses mind, body, soul. I know that it sounds cliche, but it's really important because the truth of the matter is that this is a very difficult task, and that if you want to get there, you're going to have to work hard, and you're going to have to stay motivated, and you're going to have to keep your confidence up, and you're going to have to deal with the stress and anxiety that comes with having something that you want really badly, but also being scared that you might not get it. And that's just as important to address as the technique as well. And so our hope at this program is to give you both of those things, to hand you the tools and the techniques that you'll need, and also to deal with these mind, body, soul questions, and to make the impossible possible. So we're going to go ahead and tell you our stories, what it was that we did to pass the federal exam, and then we'll talk about what our program is actually going to look like. So I can have Virginia go first and tell her story whenever I find the button to stop sharing. There we go.
Okay, everybody. So let me tell you about my parents. My mother's Cuban. My father is Colombian. They are actually both teachers. I am third generation teacher. I have it in my blood. My mother's parents were also teachers. This is me, the youngest of three. My parents have a very unique marriage because when my mother and my father got married, she already had a master's degree on her shoulders, while my father had not finished high school. Now, this is because he came from a very poor family and he had to drop out in order to help support the family. And he was a very hard worker. And when my mom and my dad met, he was working towards becoming a high school graduate. She fell in love over heels with him, and she believed in him, so she stood by his side. During my whole childhood, I saw my dad work so hard, and I think that example really went a long way for me to become federally certified. I saw him really hustle. I saw him studying while he worked, and it was really an awesome example. At the same time, I also had goals of my own. I wanted to become a theater actress. I fell in love with acting for the very first moment that I took my first role, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. My father graduated as an engineer, and then my parents had a deal. Once my dad graduated after all those years, from first from high school, then from engineering, it was going to be my mom's turn, and we were going to be moving to Gainesville, Florida. And that's what we did. And she studied really hard, again, showing me an amazing example, the type of example you're going to need. And I'm sure you have it in you to do the same thing, to work really hard to accomplish your goals. While I was living in the States, I went to middle school. Here I am in a school play, playing a nerd, which really wasn't a big stretch for me. My mom got her PhD. We came back to Colombia. When it was time for me to go to the university, my father asked me, okay, what is it that you want to study? And I went back to my childhood dream and I said, I want to be a star. Now, my dad, who had to work really hard to get out of poverty through education, was a little scared when he heard this. What he heard was, I want to starve. So he steered me away from acting and he asked me, what else would you like to do? And I had always been fascinated by psychology and philosophy and things like that. So I said, all right, I'm going to study psychology. I went into it. I actually found it fascinating from the very beginning to learn about how our brains work, how we process information, how we acquire information. I was really, really into it. I started working in Berlitz as a teacher and I fell in love with teaching. I found that teaching was so similar to acting and I could have so much fun doing it. Psychology, on the other hand, was another story. In my internship, I started having patients, which had been my goal. I mastered in clinical and educational psychology. I wanted to be a therapist, but it turns out it was awful. I was awful at it. It was really depressing for me. It was hard for me to sleep at night. I would have insomnia thinking about the cases I was treating. I would have nightmares. I decided to finish psychology, which I did, but I knew that's not what I was going to be doing with my life. I'm very thankful for psychology because it really has helped me to view the world in a very unique way. I went back to my dream of acting. I went to Manhattan. I started doing shows. I started taking classes first, and then I got in some off-Broadway shows. And then I discovered what my dad was talking about, being a starving actor. So I started working as an interpreter. I decided, hey, I'm bilingual. I went online, found a job, and showed up for my first gig. That first gig was really terrible. I fell flat on my face. Turned out you have to know more than just 2 languages in order to become an interpreter. I was really, really bad at it. Yes, believe it or not. I showed up, but I didn't have a pen or paper with me. I showed up just on time, not early. When the person started talking, I said, oh, he says his name is Juan. And the attorney gave me a crash course. She was very annoyed. But I came out of there finally. I made it through and I realized I had to study this. I went to Hunter College and I studied interpretation. I got a certificate in translation and interpretation. And a lot of doors started opening up for me. A lot of doors were opening up in the acting world, but they weren't paying gigs. Whereas with interpreting, I was getting depots and I started to really like it. When I had practiced psychology, I felt that it was a very big burden for me. I had always dreamt of helping people, but I didn't imagine it to have that emotional impact on me. Whereas I found that when I was interpreting, I could be helpful and I didn't feel the stress that I had felt when I was a therapist. So I jumped right into my next goal, which is to become certified by New York and New Jersey. I wanted to keep calm and study hard, but it was really difficult because of my background in psychology and my background as a teacher. Every time I was studying, I found myself creating a wish list. I found myself thinking, why can't we teach? Why can't I learn this? Why can't this program be structured in this way that's more user-friendly, that makes more sense, pedagogically speaking, that makes more sense, cognitively speaking? So that wish list would soon later on become the seed for my interpreting labs. But at the time, I didn't have any of that. So I just said, I'm going to do my best with what I have at hand. I studied really hard and I became certified by both states. Then I found a job in Newark, New Jersey, which was such an amazing place. It's the best university for court interpretation that you could find. We had a lot of cases, a lot of trials, a lot of violent cases, a lot of volume and very difficult cases, and I learned a lot. And I fell even more in love with the job. I have so much respect for the work that court interpreters do. I feel like we make such a positive impact in people's lives, and I'm very proud of what we do. Then I went for my next goal, which was to become federally certified. I took some courses, I took the written exam, I passed. Then I went to Arizona to take a course to prepare for the oral. And when I come back, I realize, well, there's still 2 months left, so I better keep training or else I'm going to forget what I learned. So I went into the marathon mindset and I started working and studying like a maniac. I became my own psychologist, my own teacher, my own trainer. And I basically just created the things that I wish existed. And I trained myself in a way that I had to, make from scraps the program that I knew would be most efficient. So I started putting together what is now the 3-step method. Now, one of the things that frustrated me the most was that when I would start getting to the groove, and I like to think of this like riding a wave, just when you start getting, you felt the wave. Every interpreter has felt the wave. There's moments where you feel like you're on that surfboard, that board, and that everything is in place and you can react really quickly and you can adapt and your brain is really going along with the flow. But when you bump into unknown terminology, you fall off your surfboard and you have to get up again. So just when you're getting speed, just when you're getting memory in the consecutive mode, just when you're getting that logic in the sight translation mode, you fall off. So I decided I was going to first learn the vocabulary up front. Then I was going to deal with the interpretation. By this point, I can work on skills because I know the vocabulary by heart. And then I was going to do an evaluation. And that's what I did. I started waking up 1 hour early every single day from Monday to Friday. I created my study cards. I created cassettes. I know I'm dating myself, but that's how we had to record ourselves when I was studying. And I would listen to them all the time when I was walking. 10 minutes towards the train station, 10 minutes back, 45-minute train ride to work, and 45-minute back, I would use my flashcards and my audios to drill that vocabulary. I also started studying through lunch. And I would get home at night and I would study some more. And then the next morning I would rinse and repeat. I have to say that it did take teamwork for me to pass this test. My mom actually flew from Colombia the last 2 weeks and she became my study buddy. And she would actually read things slowly to me and then faster and faster. And it was amazing to count on her help. I also counted on the support of the man I was dating at the time, who would later become my husband. He was just such an immense cheerleader, just telling me to keep going until I got to my goal. I remember the day that I got the envelope with the results. It was a cold day and I couldn't even wait to get inside the house. I just tore the envelope open right next to that mailbox. And I had passed, and it was such a good feeling, and it was such a relief, and it was such a sense of accomplishment. And that's what we want to help you guys accomplish for yourself, because it really is an amazing feeling. I kept working in Newark, some high profile cases. I actually made it to the newspaper on this one. And after a while of seeing so much rape and murder and gang violence, I felt it was time for a change. My husband and I came to California, my then boyfriend. We got married here. We adopted this cutie named Betty Boop. And we founded Interpretrain, through which I teach and I create study materials for interpreters. I said goodbye to acting, but acting will always have a special place in my heart. First of all, because it led me to the United States and to my husband, and also because it allowed me to find my true calling. And I have no doubt in my mind that I'm now doing what I was put on this earth to do, which is to train interpreters. And that's me in a nutshell.
Oh man, all right, well, it's hard to follow up that story. The truth of the matter is that Virginia and I have a lot in common. I do think it's kind of funny that we didn't meet when we were both in New Jersey. We really started chatting over the phone a few years ago, and we realized we had all these things in common and a very similar approach, but a complementary style to teaching. And so we've already collaborated together a couple of times, but I really wish you could have been my study buddy, Virginia. Anyway, this is me. I am the little girl with the pigtails on the right-hand side, and this is my family. Actually, like Virginia, I'm the third in the family, but I'm the middle child because there are two after me. And the cute little baby right there, who's not even a year old, is now getting his PhD. He's about to finish it out in Boulder, Colorado. So that's my family. Something that you may not know about my family is that, so my mother was a teacher in the sense that I was homeschooled. So growing up, I didn't necessarily have the most typical of childhoods, but one thing that I did learn was how to learn. And I really credit my parents for this, because a lot of people picture homeschooling like people sitting down with a lesson plan at a kitchen table. And that's not how it was. My parents surrounded us in an environment that was conducive to learning. They also didn't have a television in the house. And so that forced us to read books and go outside and do things that, were productive as children. It also means that I get no pop culture references ever, unless it started like 5 years ago when I began watching television. But the point is that they really did teach us how to follow our passions and how to pursue our goals. And as a child, I decided what I wanted to learn. And then I would go to the library and I would research the topic, and my parents would help to guide me. But I really did learn a lot about discipline and perseverance as a kid, being in this more autodidactic environment. So that's also me. I didn't spend all my time studying. I actually spent quite a bit of it climbing trees and doing handstands. And this is my family just a few years ago. This is this is 2 or 3 years ago. This was during the solar eclipse. We were actually out in Wyoming. It was incredible. It fell on my mom's birthday. And this is our whole family. You can see we've sprung. My older sister there in the red, those are her 4 children, and her 5th was born this week. And she is homeschooling, God bless her. So she's passing on that knowledge. And you can see the rest of my family. I've gained a couple of sisters-in-law as well. And I got married myself last year to the man who lured me to Montreal, Canada. I'll tell you a bit more about that in a moment. And I still like to do acrobatics. So about me, I actually got introduced to Spanish as a required course in community college. Yes, it's true that my homeschooling childhood was wonderful, but it's possible there were a few gaps in my education, and so I decided to fill those gaps. So at the age of 16, I went to community college, and one of the required courses was language, and I picked Spanish because it fit with my schedule. It was offered on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I thought, great, I'll check that off my list. And what I didn't realize was that I was actually going to be encountering my passion, because I fell in love with Spanish and with language in general, but particularly with Spanish. So with me, I actually entered interpreting. A lot of people come to interpreting, and you may relate to this, later in life, possibly through other careers, realizing they're bilingual and they have this, they can develop this skill that will be really useful. I wasn't quite bilingual by the time I decided I wanted to be an interpreter, but I knew that I wanted to. It opened a door to a whole new world and allowed me to communicate with people, or at least try to communicate at the time when I was still learning. And I loved it. I loved the idea of being a voice and allowing people across cultures to connect. So I knew my Spanish wasn't as fabulous as it could have been. And that's why after college, I went to live for a year in Honduras. I volunteered in a bilingual school. And when I came back, I had my very brief stint in social work. And that's when I began preparing for my exams. And I adopted a method very similar to Virginia's. I won't go crazy into detail, but there was a lot of nerdy studying involved, that is for sure. And I eventually gained my court certification and my medical certification. I was like, great, I'm good, I'm freelancing, I'm done. Except a funny thing happens when you have a support group. My mentor, Grace, who some of you may know in New Jersey, she came to me one day and she said, Athena, you have to take the federal exam. And I said, Grace, I'm really comfortable and I'm kind of sick of studying. I feel like I've been studying my whole entire life. Could I just stop here? She's like, nope, you have. She's like, she really pushed, and she was telling me, oh, just take it, just take the written exam. It's no. So me being me, I say yes. And because I'm a people pleaser, here I am today. No. So I started studying for the written exam, and I studied very difficult. It was difficult, but I studied very hard. And I studied. And as it turns out, I passed. And I passed, and that's wonderful, but it was a little bit, let me just say, when I got the results, I was like, oh man, that means I have to keep studying now. So my work was not over, and all of you who may be taking that written exam in November, you're gonna pass it, and then your work will not be over, but that's okay, because you're joining our nerd club. So as soon as that happened, I formed a study group, and together we embarked on this next challenge because one thing is over, and so now you have to keep going. And together we created glossaries. We did something similar to Virginia where we made audio glossaries that allowed us to multitask while we were doing other things. We repeated the exercises again and again, and that is very important. We'll elaborate on it a little bit more in this session, but that's what we're going to have all of you doing this spring. You will be doing things more than once. You will be repeating, you will be practicing, you will be making things automatic, and you'll be making technique automatic. We even had a book club as part of this study group to expose us to new vocabulary and just to practice our weaker languages, and mostly vocabulary and also practice. And we held each other accountable. And I think that's the most important part. A lot of people were like, oh, Athena, you're so nice for starting this study group. And I was like, I'm actually kind of selfish because I know if every single month I'm going to be checking in with you, then I'm probably going to do my work a little bit better. And we're going to offer you that chance too. So I studied and I studied like a mad lady. And there was a lot of stress and overwhelm involved. And to be honest, I had similar things to, Virginia was talking about all these things she wished. I was wishing those same things. I wished that I had better people to give me feedback. I wished that I had a program that was incremental instead of just throwing me to the sharks and handing me a difficult challenge after difficult challenge and just saying, figure it out. I wished that I had that, but I didn't. So I persevered. And eventually I passed, and it was an amazing feeling, as Virginia says, and that's really why we're here, is to help you experience that feeling too. That day when you open the letter in the mail, or more likely an email, and you see that you've passed, it's going to be imprinted in your memory forever, and it will make all of the suffering worth it. So I did pass, and I got through it with a lot of teamwork, but more help would have been nice. And that is why we're here to talk to you today about what kind of help we can offer you. And I think that's the end of my portion. Would that be right? Yeah. So I'm going to stop sharing and hand the floor over to Virginia. And you're muted, darling.
I was talking to myself. Can everyone see my screen? Let me make sure I shared my screen. Here we go. So now we're going to be talking about overcoming the challenge. How do you pass this test? What we're going to offer you is a unique approach. It's composed of 3 innovative tools. First, we're going to use an effective method. It's so important to have a good method, to not be asking yourself, what do I study? What material do I use? No, you need to have a very clear method, and that's what we're going to offer you. We're also going to be offering you state-of-the-art study material. And we're going to be offering you a holistic masterclass, which again is so important because this goal is so challenging that you need to confront it from different angles. You need to stay motivated. You need to remain, have good sleep. You need to have support. You need to have every day structured for you. So we're going to really come at it from many different angles. Let's begin with the method. We already talked about the advantage of having the 3 steps. And Athena was the one who showed me a blind spot that I had. So this works great. It gets your vocabulary up to tip-top shape. It gets your skills to really, really rise because you know the vocabulary. You can focus on speed. You can focus on memory retention. You can work on the next levels because you're not worried about the unexpected elements. And then great because you know exactly how you're doing with the evaluation, but you can get spoiled. And then come test time, you're used to always knowing the vocabulary ahead of time. So before we actually launched the labs, Athena was instrumental in creating the sequence of them, the instructions, and pointing me to the importance of doing what she calls blind runs, which is you jump right into the interpretation. You don't know any of the vocabulary. You learn to improvise. You learn to go with the flow, even when you don't know every single term. And then you go back and do the 3 steps. So that's the method we're going to be using. This innovative method is proven to boost your skills and vocabulary, and that's why our students love it. We've already published this material, and we have a lot of students who are really happy with it. So now let's talk about the study material. We're going to be working with Interpretrain's training program for the Federal Court Interpreter Certification exam. And this is when my wish list came to play because our labs include the things I had wanted. First thing is you're going to be working with vocabulary drills, getting that vocabulary in tip-top shape through diverse stimulation. You're going to be stimulating yourself visually, through audio material, and through different tasks, because that's what we need to do. Bombard your brain from different angles so you can create those neurological networks and be able to acquire that information. Every single term I looked up in 10 reputable dictionaries, so it's trustworthy. And then you go to step 2, and the beauty of step 2 is that our interpreting practices can be played slowly and then faster and faster. So you're going to be repeating the same practice, but each time you're going to be challenging yourself with a harder speed. Our practices also have dual modes, so you can do most of them consecutively and simultaneously. So once you prepare that vocab, you really get everything out of that practice because you can work on both modes. They come from real court cases and real court documents. And then we move on to step 3, which is the actual evaluation. You're going to get a grade. You're going to know exactly how you fared. One of the things that frustrated me the most when I was studying is that when you finish a practice, you don't quite know how well you did. I mean, subjectively, you have different ideas, but we all know that when you're interpreting, there's so much going on cognitively speaking. Interpreting is one of the most complex mental tasks that has been studied by neuroscientists, and they've noticed that it's multitasking on steroids. You're not going to be able, as you're interpreting, to also assess your performance. But with our method, you actually get a grade. There's no more guesswork. You're going to know if this had been a test, would I have passed? What grade would I have gotten? You're also going to be able to identify your strengths and weaknesses. No more guessing. And the beauty of this material is that you can trust it. This is the joint effort of so many people who were part of this team. These are some of the names. We have attorneys, we have medical physicians, we have linguists, PhD linguists, we have Virginia Ben-Mimin. I don't know if you guys can use the chat. Let me know if you've heard of Virginia Ben-Mimin. She actually has a bilingual dictionary that I absolutely adore, and she was one of the people who proofread our material. And of course, Athena was part of the team too, so it's a really, really solid program, and people have responded really well to it.
And we're getting some yeses about knowing Virginia.
And now we're going to talk about our actual masterclass.
Which I think means that it's my turn. So
yes, Athena is going to tell us a little bit about that.
All right, so our masterclass, Designing Our Dream. I think that Virginia and I are both a bit corny, so you might have to get used to that if you hang out with us. But we believe in it. We really do. We're not just saying the things, we believe in them. And we're both, I think, examples of what you can accomplish when you really do treat your goals like with the, I don't know, with the passion that they deserve. So we came together with a teacher wish list, and I called her last summer, at the beginning of the summer. And I was like, Virginia, the oral exam is coming up next year. We got to do something. And we started talking about what it was that we would envision for a course. And it really started to come together very organically. And it's really based on a lot of the struggles that we both had with this exam and what we hope that we can give people so that they don't necessarily have to suffer as much. You'll still be working really hard, don't worry. But as I mentioned earlier, we are going to give a holistic approach to this. It is going to be mental, and it's also going to be, well, our hope is to just address the whole package, because it is the whole package. As an interpreter, you have to be able to deal with an insane amount of stress. And when studying, you have to deal with that stress. And when taking exams, you have to be able to deal with it. And it's not a question of pushing it down or pretending that it's not there. It's about noticing that you're getting nervous, and what do you do with that feeling? What do you do when you feel that stumbling block, and how do you keep going, and how do you stay motivated and disciplined? So when we say holistic or mind-body approach, that's what we're talking about. We'll be incorporating elements of wellness into the classes ourselves, and you'll see that later on with the class description. And it's really a program that is designed to make your brain succeed. Virginia mentioned the marathon mindset earlier in order to achieve our goals. And it's really about looking at the big picture and approaching from different angles and different aspects. And that's what we'll be doing with each class that we give you. We'll be working with different exercises, and we'll highlight particular areas that can be challenging, like note-taking, like visualization, like dealing with speed or unknown terms. And so with each of the classes that you take with us,
Sorry, Athena. I think I accidentally muted you.
No worries. All right, I'm back. So essentially, we're trying to create a community of support where you will be working very closely with other people to hold each other accountable and to help you get where you want to go. We're also going to be incorporating elements of self-care, which it's very related to that whole mind-body approach, because you can't pour from an empty cup. You got to take care of yourself first, and you got to nourish to flourish. We will be going over some breathing techniques in our class, and this really is important. I find it really interesting that Virginia and I have both come to this without talking to each other, but we both approach it from this angle. So why is it so important? We all breathe every day, right? But breathing mindfully actually increases your concentration, your accuracy, and your memory retention, and those are crucial as an interpreter. It's also an effective way to keep calm, which is very important while you're studying, and it's also important while you're taking exams. I think we've all been there where we've studied really hard sometimes, and then we go in and we feel really good and we're going great, and then we hit a term that, and this is actually the worst, maybe it's not that you don't know it, you do know it and you can't think of it in that moment. And it just derails you. And the rest of the time you're thinking, how come I couldn't come up with that word? It's such an easy word. I studied it a million times. And you are so panicky that you miss what's coming next. I had a classmate a long time ago who actually had a panic attack in the middle of her exam, and she was a very good interpreter, but she wasn't able to do what she needed to do because she wasn't staying calm. And so that's why it's so important. And it's not just academic. Yes, the technique needs to be there, but you also need to be able to deal with the stress.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, if you have studied absolutely everything like a maniac and you get to the test and you're blocked, all of that information is no good because you are not going to be able to retrieve it.
Right. It doesn't matter how much you study. If you're not able to unlock it at that crucial moment, then it's worthless. And when you're nervous, your brain is not getting enough oxygen. And so that's important. You need to have access to that information. But to the contrary, an oxygenated brain is going to grant you easy access to data. So yes, we'll be talking about breathing in our class, and that's why it's really important to success. You'll also have study buddies. And not only will you have study buddies, but we are going to really go into detail about effective ways to support each other while interpreting. What does effective feedback look like? And I'm sorry to tell you, but if you sit down and you're chatting for an hour with your study buddies, it doesn't count as studying. You do actually have to do the work, but there's ways that you can make it more effective. And the better that you get at giving your partners feedback, the better you'll be at analyzing your own output. So you really we're going to help you to become your own teachers and to become each other's teachers and to do all the holding each other accountable and just moral supporting that this journey requires. A study buddy is going to increase your motivation, your commitment, and will light a fire under your butt. And they're going to give you useful feedback. As part of the course, we're also going to have a forum, and that's going to be where we can communicate on a weekly basis, talk about the homework of the week, talk about our struggles and our difficulties. And when you as students have questions or concerns, or you're just looking for feedback or advice, you'll post to the forum and all of us will see it. Virginia will see it, so will I, and so will all of your classmates. And so it'll be a good way of sort of just keeping the spirit up and motivating you, and also just addressing concerns as they come up. And sometimes we'll be able to answer right then and there, oh, try this, or we might say, okay, that's a good question, we'll address it in the next class. We're also going to be doing our exercises more than once. Repetition is extremely important. And I hear from a lot of people that they think that it's cheating. We're here to tell you it is not cheating. It's actually really crucial. And that misconception that doing something again is cheating is really responsible for a lot of failed interpreting tests. Because if you don't go back and do the exercise again, you're missing an incredible opportunity to reincorporate vocabulary and also to deal with all the things you identified. You're going to record yourself. Everyone's always going to record themselves. You're going to listen to that recording. That's the next step. And you're going to identify where you're going well and where things need to be improved. And you're going to need to address those things. And so the perfect way to do that is to then go back to the exercise and say, okay, last time I kept missing the endings of all those consecutive utterances. I think I'm getting distracted. I think I'm starting to get nervous that my memory is saturated. And ironically, that's then distracting me and I'm not paying attention. So then I'm missing things. So like you identify the problem, you identify what's causing it, and then you go back and you try it again. Now that you have a better understanding of what was going on in the first place, then you'll be able to address that and make things automatic and routine so that you're able to minimize that voice or whatever it is that is the problem. Point is, you're going to need to do it again and again and again and again so that you can address all of the different things that are causing you problems until you feel amazing and excellent, and then we'll go to the next exercise. Repetition allows you to squeeze every last drop out of each interpreting practice, and it's really worth it. So we're going to be there to give you support leading right up to the exam. We've designed it purposely this way to start at the beginning of March. Y'all can start right now. You should start right now. Start studying now. And then when it's really time to put the pedal to the metal is just a few months before the exam, and that's where we'll come in. So we're going to start on March 1st, and we're going to take you all the way to June 7th. And that exam is going to be June 10th. So we really wanted to be there with you in those final months leading up to the exam and send you on your way to go kick some butt. There will be 2 intensive weeks. We'll start at the beginning with an intensive week. And here you're going to have the opportunity to use Interpretrain's note-taking program, which is really amazing. And I'm always recommending it to my students. Yes, I love Virginia, but she didn't tell me to say that. I really do believe in this program. And so note-taking is where a lot of people struggle, and consecutive is where a lot of people struggle, and it's where a lot of points are on the federal exam. So we're going to jumpstart our program with that note-taking technique. And you're going to be introduced to skills like, and you've heard this before probably, but it bears repeating, listening. And I'm moving around all my visualization, memory, symbols, and techniques to streamline your notes. You'll notice that symbols and note-taking actually came after the listening and the visualization and the memory. And that's because your notes aren't going to make any sense unless you're listening and analyzing effectively. So a huge part of note-taking is actually listening and picturing and understanding what's happening. And it sort of gets overlooked sometimes. So again, that will be something that we are covering in our course.
And just to jump in for a second there, Athena. So we are going to be working, for those of you who are familiar with the note-taking manual, this program is like the note-taking manual on steroids. So we have put together a really comprehensive program that is going to get your consecutive interpreting skills super sharp.
Absolutely. Time management, that's a big one. We're going to be talking about time management with you all and helping you to effectively manage your time because we've already created your schedule. The deal is that it's not about having time, it's about making time. And to that end, this is the schedule that we're envisioning. These 2 are definitely a go. Monday and Thursday evenings, we'll be having classes. Sometimes it will be both of us. Often it'll be us alternating, but you'll be seeing us every week on either Monday or Thursday. You guys will be there all the time, Mondays and
Those
Thursdays.
2 days, yes.
Now, homework days, there's some wiggle room here. So like, let's say you're busy Tuesday night, you don't necessarily have to do it then, but it is going to be a fairly rigorous schedule. And when I say fairly rigorous, it's going to be rigorous. So you are going to need to keep up because part of what you're doing is preparing for the next class, and that will help you. It'll help to keep you accountable and just to keep you progressing through the material. We're going to be covering a lot of labs. Virginia and I are meeting weekly to design the program, and we're getting you as much material as you can. So classes Monday and Thursday, recommended homework Tuesday or Friday, Tuesday and Friday. And then on Wednesdays, that's our recommendation for when you would meet with your pod. Your pod is going to be your really close-knit support group. It's going to be groups of probably about 3 students. And that's where you will drill particular exercises together. And that's where you'll be giving each other the feedback that we talked about earlier. Sometimes in class, you'll be giving each other feedback as well, and we'll talk about that later. But that's your schedule. You have classes Monday, Thursday. You're doing your homework on Tuesdays and Fridays. On Wednesday, you have pod. And on Saturdays, because you are a nerd, you will have some extra nerd time if you want it. This is not mandatory, but we're throwing it out there for the nerds in the room. We'll have a bunch of different practices that you can do to get your bonus points, bonus nerd points. The good news, okay, sorry. So the total hours that you'll be spending, it's almost 200 hours. There's 68 hours of instructor contact. That's when we'll be in the room with you with the class. 24 hours in your pods. 56 hours on homework. That's approximate because, you know, people go at quicker or slower speeds, but we're trying to show you a breakdown here. And extra nerd time, 28 hours. So that all totals nearly 200 hours. We're trying to give you the bang for your buck. It's 14 weeks of intense work. It's not going to be easy. We're going to be expecting a lot from you, but the sacrifices are not going to last a lifetime, and the results will. The good news is on Sunday, you get to do nothing. It really is important to get some downtime. And, you know, we do want you to be working your butts off, but we also want you to be taking care of yourselves and, you know, maybe seeing the family that you've been ignoring all week because you've been so busy working and studying. So the idea is you get your homework done, you met with your pods, you've had class time, and so your reward comes on Sunday when you can do nothing and chill and maybe treat yourself for all of the work that you have been doing. And we're going to talk about our tools next. Am I still talking, Virginia?
I'm going to take over the tool parts. I'm going to tell
Alrighty.
you guys a little bit about the tools. You guys be a little patient with me. So we're going to be working about the interpreting lab. We're going to be talking about the interpreting labs, and you're going to do a little demo for us. So we're going to be working with Interpret Train's labs. That's the actual material that you're going to be working with. And actually, Athena is going to give us a little demo of those labs.
Do you want me to give that now?
Yes, please.
Alrighty.
Is
Hang
that
on just a second? Yeah, that's fine. I'll pull it up now.
So we want you guys to see what the material that since it's really innovative, it's really tailored to how we learn to be brain friendly. So we really want to show you in detail how that material is structured.
All right, I'm pulling it up here. And I also wanted to say there's some great questions in the chat. I don't have I can't really answer them now, but save them. They're good questions and we will address them during the Q&A. So we're just as an example, we're going to take a look at Lab 40. It's crime scene evidence collection, expert witness testimony. So this is the type of material you'll be working with in class, in your pods, and for homework. So the idea is that you'll probably start with a blind run where you just go in and you do the best you can, because it is important to know what to do when you're not sure, when you don't know a term, when you're not familiar with it beforehand. You need to have strategies in place because of course that's what the exam will be like. But after that, going through this 3-step process is going to be crucial to really mastering the lab and mastering the vocabulary. There are a lot of options for vocabulary in this 3-step process. So to begin with, we have slides. And here we can see, okay, it's going to be terminology related to criminal law, ballistics, and fingerprints. Those may very well come up in the federal exam, as you all know, for the expert witness portion. And here's some instructions, but I'll just tell you what's up here. So for example, firing, right? We have the term the phrase, where did the firing take place? Firing is what's underlined, so we want to know how to say it, but it's really going to be helpful to learn in context. So we click next and we see all of these options: disparos, tiros, tiroteo, balacera, and then we have the actual phrase with that underlined term. We keep going and we're going to see some terms that may not be so familiar to you, like leading edge. The leading edge is where the surface where the bullet comes in, el borde de la entrada. We have brand name, powder charge, carga de pólvora, right? So these are all things that we're going to be doing. And a lot of this will be as homework. You'll be doing the vocabulary prepping for the next time you meet with your pod or with the class. But there's other ways to study it, which is so awesome. So one of the things that will be available to you would be those same terms, but now instead of seeing them, you're hearing them. And that's when we're talking about diversity of tools, that's what we mean. This is really cool. And I actually also did this when I was studying for the federal exam. I created a bunch of audio glossaries, and it was very similar to this, where you would listen and you hear the term in English, there's a pause, and then you hear it in Spanish. And actually the way that Interpret Train has laid it out, you'll hear that whole sentence. And so you'll try to interpret the sentence into Spanish. And we recommend that you actually do it out loud, but if you're, I don't mind if the neighbors think I'm crazy and I'm outside and I'm talking to myself and practicing my vocabulary, but you can always do it in your head. But the cool thing about this is you can do it while multitasking. So you can be washing the dishes, you could folding the laundry, picking your kid up from school, and you can be practicing your vocabulary at the same time. Back to here. So another thing that we have are drills. And here we can see there's a few different options, right? You have flashcards where you can go, just like look at one side and look at the other. There's also a memory game that you can play. I'm clicking on it. Yeah, there we go. With the memory game, what you do is you have it, you see the term and firing, and then you think, okay, what's it going to be? You show the answer, and then you can say, okay, I got it wrong or I got it right, and it'll keep track of that. There's also an option to generate a quiz or to play matching games. And so there's a lot of different ways to interact with the vocabulary. And the last thing that you can do is you can actually target, this is why it's target practice, you can target certain terms that you may not be sure of. So let's say you're happy with all the vocabulary, but you keep forgetting these 5. Or 4, I don't know how many there are here, and you would highlight all of them, click submit, and then here they are, these 4 terms. And so now you can practice them again and again. You reveal it afterward, and you can mark how many you got correct. So when you're at the end, then you get this little congratulations thing, which is always a bit motivating. So that's your vocabulary. That's step 1, and that will often be a homework assignment for you. And see, the step 2 is your interpretation, and a lot of these different exercises are available both in consecutive and simultaneous modes. With the consecutive, you have the decelerated and the normal option, so you can work with different speeds that can help you to train different things. And with simultaneous, we have 3 different speed options, which is awesome for being able to get that incremental practice that both Virginia and I wished that we had when we were studying for the federal. And it's also great because on the federal exam, you'll have a simultaneous practice that's 120 words per minute, like you might have seen in your state certification. But there's also that piece that's 160 words a minute. You're going to have to be able to work up to that speed, and these materials allow you to get there incrementally.
So the good news is when we say that you're going to be working with the same practice repeatedly, fortunately, you're going to be working at different speeds and different levels of difficulty. So it doesn't get boring.
Yeah. And then we do it over and over and over again. So once you've gone through all of this, the step 3 is the grading part. And that's the thing that Virginia mentioned. She wished that she'd had that way of evaluating herself. Well, she certainly made us a way to evaluate ourselves, and it's really cool. You're going to be able to actually upload your audio file to this program, or you can even use the Interpretrain app. So once you've done that, you'll see here's your transcript, and you can follow along with what you're hearing on your recording. So as you're looking at, were you able to get any indication as to where the firing took place, you're hearing whatever you said to interpret that piece. And you hit your first scoring unit, it will actually stop so that you can check and see, how did you do? Did you say what you should have said? And you'll have a bunch of options here. And if you said any of them, or if you said one that you know is definitely correct, you can hit correct. You go through to the next one, you're going, you hit the next one, and maybe you didn't have any idea how to say leading edge, you marked that one wrong. And so you go through the whole thing and you hit submit at the end, and that's when you'll be able to actually evaluate your score.
And let me actually show you guys how that works, because we are super excited about that. So as Athena mentioned, here we have a breakdown of everything that we evaluated. So you can see exactly which terms you got right and which terms you got wrong. And then you have an actual score. If you get anything 80 or less, you should probably do it again. But in this case, we did well. It says the title of the lab. It tells me which type of practice I was doing. In this case, it was a simultaneous 160, and it allows me to self-evaluate. And this is really important. It's not just about a number. It's about being able to get a little more granular and say, how is my accuracy? How is my completeness? So you're going to be able to really go in depth and do a more qualitative evaluation. And you're going to put a comment for yourself, and then you're going to submit. And here we are. We get our certificate of completion. It tells us the name of the lab. It tells us the date. It tells us which type of practice we were doing and the speed. Also, our detailed self-evaluation, as well as the scores. You're going to get a breakdown and the actual final self-evaluation score and your vocabulary score. And you're going to be able to download it as a PDF file, and it'll be ready for you to be able to print it if you want or save it electronically so you can keep track of your progress.
And just a couple other things on the outline itself, and then we're coming to a close pretty soon and we'll be able to answer your questions. But we are planning on using the 3-step tools that InterpretTrain has developed, and we're going to be supplementing it with some old faithfuls that you may be familiar with. And you've probably got these on your bookshelf, but we're going to have a lot of ideas for you on how you can utilize them effectively. So one of them is the Interpreter's Companion. This is going to be very helpful for some of our extra nerd bonus point activities, as well as the Interpreter's Edge, which we'll be supplementing in, especially for some of the consecutives, just to get you to see what different things look like. We really want to give you we want to be able to have you make the most of all the materials that are available to you. And Virginia and I both really think that these materials are very helpful.
But the good news is you're going to know day by day what you're working with.
Yes. So the classes will be 2 hours long, and they'll look pretty much like this. We'll begin every class with questions on the homework. That way we'll know that you did the homework, as well as from your forum posts. And we'll also be assessing knowledge of assigned vocabulary. We'll be talking about tips and tricks for that particular interpretation practice. What challenges did you have? What tips do Virginia and I have for you? And maybe some things that your colleagues can share with you that you hadn't thought of. And we'll also be incorporating wellness exercises into the class. We'll then have an in-class interpretation practice. Some of them will be done in groups, and sometimes we'll have you working individually. And afterward, we'll always debrief on interpreting strategies. We'll end with a homework assignment and some motivation to keep you going as your week continues. For the final week, we're going to have 5 classes. It's going to be our final sprint, and it's going to include a mock exam as well as smart test taking tips. And I think that that's just about it. So the deal is that the dreams don't work unless you do. So you're going to make your dreams a reality.
And now I want to share with you guys this, that I think it's the most important thing that you can keep in mind in order to pass this test, which is that your dreams don't work unless you do. I was watching this documentary on Michael Jordan, and I was really blown away because I had thought that Michael Jordan had started being the best basketball player in his neighborhood. We somehow have this idea that from the time he was in his little crib, if you could genetically analyze his muscle tissue, it was superior to every other kid in America. But it turns out he wasn't the tallest, he wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the one who would score the most. He just was the one who worked the hardest. And that's what you're going to have to do for this test. Whether you work with our material and with our program, or whether you work on your own, just be incredibly passionate about this goal and give it your all. Don't have this idea that some people are born winners and some people are born losers. Everybody who's passed this test has hustled and worked really, really hard. The good news is when you have a method, it's so much easier to do it. So our federal oral exam master class is going to boost your skills in consecutive, sight translation, and simultaneous in these 3 modes. You're also going to maximize your core vocabulary. But most importantly, we're going to provide you an approach that is really holistic, where you're going to be tackling this issue from a body, mind, spirit approach. So you're going to be able to make sure that you're strengthened in every way so you can give your best. We're going to give you the support you need, the guidance, the structure, so you can push yourself and accomplish your goals. And now we're going to talk about the application process.
So we are going to have an application for this, and in a moment you'll be receiving an email, and you can actually go ahead to that link and apply. I can share my screen here.
For the moment, it's in the chat box.
Okay, awesome. So you can actually click on that link right now and take a look. But basically, we're asking some questions. We want to get to know you. I actually did see a question in the chat box. How will we know? How will you know if we're at the right level? That's why we have this application process. We want to know, first of all, who are you? What is your motivation? And also, can you commit to this? We're asking for a commitment. It's not just about attending the classes. It's being there as support for your classmates and keeping up with the homework. So you really do need to think about whether you can commit to this. But like Virginia said, whether you're in our program or you're studying on your own, you're gonna have to commit time if you want to really pass this exam. So we want to see that. We want to make sure that you're going to be able to work as a team and to support each other, and that you are the right fit for this program. Did I miss anything? Is there?
No, actually you did not. I just want to add that for those of you who can't access it on the chat, don't worry, we're going to be emailing you that information so you can go ahead and submit your application.
Exactly. And so once you've done your application and we've received it and we've reviewed it, then you'll be receiving follow-up from Brad, who will talk to you in a moment. And he'll work with you to go through the rest of the process so that you can officially register for the program. I think that is it. And then we were going to have Brad talk to you a bit about the question you've all been waiting for, which is tuition. Is there anything else that I've missed, or should we hand the floor over to Brad?
I think we should hand the floor over to Brad. Can we go to the next slide?
Oh yeah, sure. Let me go back. Hang on. All right. Okay. So next slide it is.
So tuition, yay. Actually, that was a really awesome presentation. And it's a hard act to follow. And I hate to, talk money, but this investment is going to be $17.95. That's going to be the early tuition price. And that's going to be good until December 1st. After December 1st, the registration will go up to $19.95. We will be offering a installment plan option, which will be 4 payments for $525, and the deadline for that will be December 2nd. And I'll be here to answer any questions you have, both on the registration process and after you join. Hopefully, I'll be here to answer all of your technical questions and make sure the learning process is as smooth as possible for you.
Awesome, thank you. So, the other thing to mention is that you will be getting, with this payment, you'll be getting access to the materials we mentioned, which is the note-taking package and the package that we're putting together for this course, and you'll have 1 year access to that material. So that's coming to you with your tuition.
And just so you know, that is the material by itself without any of the instructor or the pods, or if you're not part of this master class and you just want to buy the materials on your own, that would be around $500 to $600. Is that correct, Brad?
Yeah, that's correct. The total amount of the educational material from Interpretrain comes out to be about $600 just on its own.
Right, so we know, the numbers there, and you need to talk it over and see if this is something that you can do, and we're really trying to offer you as much as we can with this.
Yeah, and there's one thing I can say with absolute confidence, that if you join us for this journey, it's going to be all of the participants are going to be giving it their all, and we're really going to be here to help support you and set you up for success on this exam.
Absolutely. So just to recap, so I make sure that there's clarity on the price, that those prices that we have include the material from Interpretrain. So those, that would be the full price you would be investing.
And the date you want to think about is making up your minds about this. You have a couple of weeks. If you want that early bird pricing, make sure that you register before December. And without further ado, let's open it up for questions.
And there's just one more thing before, on the application process. So when you fill out the application, it's really important to us because we want to make sure that everyone who meets the criteria to bring the most to the group. So, we want this to be a tight group, everyone helping each other, fully supportive, and that's what we're looking for. Not only the experience, but the support network.
Yes, no, that bears
absolutely.
mentioning. All right.
Yes, and also
so,
if you apply and you don't make it, that doesn't mean that you're not going to pass this test. It just means that we don't think the program is a good match for you. But I know everybody who's native command of both languages and has experience and is committed. That's what we're looking for.
yeah. All right. So, do you mind if I
Let's
stop
see
sharing
some
that I can see people's
questions.
faces and
Yes, yes.
questions? All right. So, oh, this is actually a good question.
Yeah, I saw a few good questions.
Yeah, feel free if we miss it, because sometimes we may miss. You can always put your it down in the chat again. So we have a question about materials being in English, Spanish. What about other languages? The federal oral exam, this is beyond Virginia's and my control. It's only offered in English and Spanish. One thing that we didn't mention is that we actually will be conducting many of our classes, if not the majority of them, in Spanish. We're going to take a poll of the room and see where people's weaknesses lie, but often living in the US for so long, we've had too much exposure to, well, not too much, but not enough exposure to other languages and to like a high register, very standard sort of Spanish. So we'll be actually using Spanish in our classes.
I also see a question on, is there a cap? We do have limited spaces. We're not going to leave it up to just anybody who signs up. We don't have an exact number yet, but we definitely know that we don't want a group to be way too big because we do want to be able to get to those hard reach places. So we are going to keep it limited. So it is, time sensitive.
There's a question about when the classes are going to start, and that will be in March 2021. They'll start March 1st, 2021. There's another question that says, what time are the classes? We're going to see who comes. It's going to be a majority West Coast versus East Coast thing. We're trying to make it so that people coming home from work on the West Coast can still attend the classes and at the same time accommodate East Coasters who have a bedtime. So our idea is to start around 5 or 5:30 Pacific time, which would be 8 or 8:30 Eastern. You may have to do the math for Central and and Mountain time. But that's the idea, is 5 or 5:30 Pacific time.
We also see here a question of, will we offer this class every year? We have not decided that. Right now, we are taking it one master class at a time. So we can't guarantee that in the next 2 years, we'll be offering the same class.
And
But
there was
definitely,
also,
since all of you are going to sign up for sure.
there's a question on where to register. So we'll be sending out an application. We'll review the application. If all looks good, we'll go ahead and send you out the information to register.
Yes, absolutely.
Another question is,
go ahead.
Sorry, I see, are there monthly payments or weekly? And as you saw, we do have a payment plan that's available if you begin it by December 2nd, and that one is 4 payments of $525. So that's our payment plan. Yeah, and it's monthly.
Yes. We also had somebody asking, if you buy the program by itself, how long do you have access to it? So if you just bought our materials without being part of the master class, you would have that for 6 months. Is that correct, Brad?
Right.
If you buy it with the class, with the master class, then you would have access to it for 1 full year. The classes would begin in March 1st.
Will you be collecting statistics on your passing rates? Yes, we will.
Yeah, we're very excited about that.
Hilda says, where do I sign?
I see a question here. Will the coursework be organized also by mode of interpretation? So basically what we are going to be doing is we're going to be working on, most labs have the opportunity to do dual mode, so you can do it consecutively and simultaneously. But we're also going to be, the program has intertwined site translations. One of the reasons why we're doing it like that, so every 2 consec simul's you have 1 site. And that's what we're going to be doing. Sometimes it's 1 and 1. The reason why we do that is because we've noticed that some people tend to focus first on simul, then on consec, then on site. So by the time you finish the program, your simul might be shaky, and then your site is really strong. Whereas if you weave them all together at the end of the program, you're really strong in the 3 modes.
If you are unable to attend a live session, is there a way to make up for it? So we will be recording the classes, and so you will be able to catch up. I would say if you know you're going to be missing all of those classes, that's something you should put in the application, and we should talk to you about, because that might not end up being very feasible. But if you have issues like that, you can put them in your application and we'll talk to you about that.
Absolutely.
All
Let's see,
right.
are we missing any other questions? Please don't be shy.
There
If you have a
was
question that we haven't answered,
there
yes,
is
go
a
ahead, Brad,
question
please.
from can we register in case we pass the written exam in November, or do you prefer for us to apply after we know we have passed? What from your perspective, Virginia?
You can get the ball rolling now. The written exam is just a few weeks away. So if you're interested in this program, you can apply, but let us know where you are in that process. And then obviously we probably wouldn't process your registration until after your results come through. That would be my thinking. What do you think, Virginia?
I haven't spoken to Brad about that yet. What do you think, Brad?
Well, I mean, strictly from a learning perspective, the written exam is inconsequential, but I mean, certainly, I would have to, if someone doesn't pass the exam and, they're still going to get a lot out of the course regardless. They're going to become
Absolutely.
better interpreters because of it.
There is no question that this program is going to elevate your skills and get your vocabulary up to par. There's no question about that.
There have been a couple of people asking about what they're going to do if they've already bought the program. The idea with the course is that we're designing it as it is and we're giving you as much as we can. That said, again, that's something that you could mention in your application. We're already giving you the possibility of the early bird. So I don't know, is there anything we want to add on that front, Brad?
No, it's going to, even if you've worked with our material before, the price will remain the same. Feel free to give me a call. We can talk more about it. But for the amount of hours that Virginia and Athena are going to be committing to this program, it's just such a great value. I mean, nearly 200 hours of hybrid instruction, and the energy that Virginia and Athena are going to give you is just going to be so vital. So at this point, no, we're not separating the two.
Some people also have a question regarding the class schedule. I'm just going to repeat that one more time. We're going to be meeting with the instructors, either with both of us or one of us. You're going to be meeting on Monday and Thursday. So you have 2 days of classes. We recommend you get your homework done on Tuesday and Friday, but you don't have to do it during those days, whenever is good for you. You're going to have a pod that you are going to most likely have your homework already done for that pod. That means that's the group schedule. So you're actually going to be held accountable for 3 times a week to meet with others. 2 times with us, 1 time with your pod, with your group. And then Saturday, optional extra nerd time, and Sunday you rest. We also have another question again regarding the time. We're thinking it's going to be either 5:30 Pacific Standard Time, which would make it 8:30 Eastern time. But we're also thinking if we have more people on the East Coast, we might make it a little bit earlier. So it either might be 5:30 till 7:30 Pacific Standard Time, or 5 to 7, and then Eastern time either 8 to 10 or 8:30 to 10:30. We're going to have to see how the group looks.
There's a couple other questions. Does the cost include printed and reference materials sent to students? We're going to be pretty green in this class, and as you saw when I was demoing things online, your materials for the interpreting the 3-step method, those are all online. So I don't anticipate us printing and mailing you things, but there'll definitely be a lot of communication via the internet. And there was a question by Hilda about, what if I'm a morning person and I'm comatose by 5 or 6? So what we can tell you is that your homework and your pods, you can schedule those as you wish. They don't have to be in the evenings. We're trying to work around the fact that a lot of people are working during the day. And that's why the classes, there isn't really wiggle room for that. So we're going to recommend that you pace yourself during the day and just like give it that final push in the evening.
And then worst case scenario, I'm so sorry to jump in, Athena. Worst case scenario, because you're going to be getting, you're going to have access to all of the recordings of each class. If you can't make it to class, you can then watch it on your own schedule. So not being able to make it to class is not an excuse. You can go ahead and watch that class next morning, watch it during your lunch break, do the exercises along. The only thing that I do urge you to do is if you're going to watch the class, pretend as if it were happening in real time. So even if I'm doing it through my lunch hour and the class was last night, I'm going to pretend it's happening in real time, and I'm going to be doing everything that's happening in the class. Because just sitting on your behind watching the class is not going to do the work. It's not going to get the job done.
I've answered a couple of questions already by just typing the response into the chat. One question was, how will the study group's feedback giving be divided? That's going to be Virginia and me. That's part of why we want to get to know you all. I saw a question actually earlier in the chat that was about languages being shared. And we're going to take all that into account, and we're going to try to assign you into groups that are complementary in terms of skills and weaknesses, in terms of language, and that sort of thing. So we will be handpicking you and putting you into your pods. Have we missed any other questions? Anyone have
Please
anything
speak
else?
now or forever hold your peace.
Or just send an email later.
That's true.
Tony says he has the Edge 21. No, it'll be the Turbo that we're using. All right. Okay, I think that's bringing us to the end. Thank you so much. We know that your evenings are valuable, and we really appreciate you coming out to see us. And we are available by email if you realize you have a question later on. So feel free to reach out if you do have more questions, and we really look forward to having many of you in the program.
Before we close, there's just a couple of questions I wanted to address, just the last ones. We have somebody who is asking the dates of the oral. We say June the 10th. Are we planning to offer something like this for medical interpreters? For the time being, we're not going to be able to do that. So we're just focusing on court for now. The application will be sent to you via email. So for those of you who are not able to copy it in the chat, you're going to be getting an email for you to get that application.
Okay, and there's one more question. How much direct feedback will students receive from the instructors? There will be, what we're going to do is we're going to have you working, and Virginia and I will be going from breakout room to breakout room observing, and we'll be giving you a lot of targeted overall feedback. So we'll hear different people saying different things, and then as we come back together and debrief, you will be getting our feedback to the class, as well as just the tools to evaluate what you need to do on your own. So there will be direct feedback in that sense during the classes. Can you talk more about the sample test the master class includes? We're designing it right now, so it's in process, but the idea is to really replicate the testing conditions so that you have that chance as the test is approaching to have similar site translation lengths, similar simultaneous speeds, and that kind of thing. So it will be as close to the real exam as possible. I'm seeing a lot of people saying they filled things out, and I think that's it. All right. Thank you so much for coming, everyone.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. Remember, we're here to support your goals, whether you work with us or not. We really are here to help you achieve your dreams. And we wish you great success in your quest to become the best interpreter you can be.